We in
We're on.
show to have all this stuff kind of ready more in advance than it has been. Hello, sir.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going great. It's good to see you, Jeff. It's good. I love that this is our like pre-Friday ritual.
Oh, dude, I love it. It's so awesome
that we get to just like tackle this together. It's always so much fun.
It feels so good, and I gotta say that like I've been trying to reduce the number of beers I have in any given week just because I sleep a little bit better and all that type of stuff. But Thursday nights, like after we wrap up, if I'm gonna have a beverage, it's gonna be after the Kessel chat, because I know that like, okay, Friday, I don't really have any meetings. I've got other work to do, but like, you know what? I can go inside. Wife and I can watch a show. We can watch Making It, because I love watching Making It. It's like one of my favorites.
Oh, right on.
We are addicted to that show. When it came up, like I don't watch reality TV ever. I can't stand it. I don't want to deal with other people's problems. I don't want to see artificial drama on TV. I'm like, there's enough drama and work and stuff. I don't need to watch more things play out on TV. But Making It's not that, and everyone's being super creative, and the whole time all I do is kind of judge myself for not being more creative and more crafty when I'm watching the show. And there's a few times my wife is like, she's like, Jeff, just sit still, you can do something later. I'm like, but I feel like I should be making something right now while they're making something on TV. But back to
don't get me started. I am like that. Okay, so there's a couple of actual reality TV shows that I truly get into, and one of them is I got way too into what is it? It's on Netflix, Alone. It's a series where they drop someone off in like the wilderness, and they have to stay out there for as long as they can, just kind of by themselves. And it's a competition show where all of these people are all kind of like, oh, they're in the Arctic or they're somewhere, and they're just like having to spend all this time like on their own, like hunting and surviving. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, when can I get out and camp? I need to go through some of my gear. Oh, that's a good fishing strategy. I might have to try that. I need to get a gill net. I'll get like wrapped up in that, or the Great British Baking Show, which then just gets me to make terrible food, where I think I too can cook that, and I can't.
If it helps me, whenever it's safe for us to get together, I will just bring you some baked goods. I will just bring baked goods. You can live I'll make some videos for you too, so you can just see me baking, so you can live vicariously through that, and then you just get to eat all the goodies. I'll just feed you kids a bunch of sugar and send them home with you. There you go.
I love it so much. This could, again, the Kessel chat, I feel we could probably expand to just general lifestyle. Now it's a Star Wars lifestyle channel.
It's really more like a platform, sort of like AWS. Yeah. We're a platform.
Yeah, exactly.
We offer services on top of the platform, and it just depends on what services you're going to get. We don't really plan those.
And we might just have some people that are here, they're utilizing that Star Wars service. We're going to be talking about the worlds of Star Wars. We're going to be doing that, but for those people who also want some good recommendations on things related to reality TV, we can do that. For people that aren't yet annoyed with my references to Star Trek, we have Lower Decks is on tonight. Season 2 has come back. So yeah, there's like it's a platform. It's a platform for ideas.
It is. It's a thing we do. We offer a variety of content types for our audience. And by the way, hey everybody, welcome back to the Kessel chat.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's been a week. Ryan and I were talking before the show about stuff and things that we won't get into on this particular show. That's for a totally different type of live stream altogether. That we need more adult beverages to get into a show like that on a regular basis. But I digress. But we both kind of got out of town or did some things this weekend. So we were I just got back from my vacation yesterday. So we're getting settled back into a flow again, and kids are going back to school. Mm-hmm. So if you're catching the show live, thanks for being here. And if you're catching this on the replay,
yes.
Just a quick hint for everybody. This isn't bad news. Don't worry. I'm not like burying a bad lead. We've been teasing a few different times that we created a new channel on YouTube dedicated to the Kessel chat. So both of us are going to dedicate time over the next week or so to get that finally wrapped up. So hopefully within the next week-ish, we will start doing our live streams on that new YouTube channel. We'll get you all the information about it. We'll publish it. No big deal. and the date and times might change a little bit. Kids are going back to school now, so we're just going to find the right balance for both of us. But same content, same soapboxes of information about Star Wars and all of the other things that we think of on a given day. So the Kessel chat's not changing. We just might move days a little bit or move times. No big deal.
Yeah, but I will say I'm really excited about the new channel because we've talked so much about producing unique content. One of the things that I've been working on for a while now is just a specialized video that talks about Star Wars as a color story. But I feel like finding this, which I
Dude,
shared on
yes.
Twitter, I might need to tell this story.
I think you do.
So this is for anyone who didn't see this on Twitter. This is actually, and you can see the poor condition of my hands there. This is actually the ticket at Stadium 10 theaters that I guess embarrassingly I camped out overnight to get. And it was the midnight showing of Star Wars Episode 1. I think that's actually one of the coolest parts of this is that you can see that it's like 12:01 a.m. on the ticket or something. And it just happened that it came out on the 19th. My birthday is May 18th, and it was like one of the best days of my life that then ended in the most confusing way possible where and I've talked about this on the show, Jeff, but I feel like that day is like could not be more of a time capsule of what it was to live in the 90s and to have the resurgence of Star Wars and what it was like to go to it was my first like midnight movie. It was my first like experience where it was like, oh, I'm a part of a larger community of fans of crazy people that came dressed up for this movie that had their own lightsabers that they built, that they had tinfoil blasters and stuff, and to go out there and to have yeah, there was nothing that I could compare to what that hype was like, what that felt like to go to that first that first initial showing. And yeah, finding this ticket was like a nice journey through the past.
That is so cool.
So
that is so cool. Yeah, you definitely
yeah.
need to do a little bit longer video on that for sure.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was
That's
a lot
so
of fun.
cool.
So I'll do a whole video of Star Wars memories, and if I can, I'll try to. I think I might have had the movie tickets from every single one of them in that box.
Oh, dude.
So I'll see what I can go and try to find.
You were more like what's the word I'm looking for? You're just more focused.
Oh, I was like a fanatic.
Yeah, I never kept that stuff. A friend of mine in high school did.
Oh.
He actually scrapbooked and kept all that thing. And at the time, I'm like, what are you doing? And it wasn't until the day before our 20-year reunion, we all met up in Long Beach at a brewery, or a group of us that hung out in high school, and we were talking about things. And someone brought up, said, "Hey, John, didn't you have a scrapbook of like movie tickets and pictures and stuff?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I did." And then as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I do that? Like, because I remembered that he had it. I'm like, oh my God, that would have been so cool to have these things and like look back at this memorabilia and just have it. Like, I've got pictures online on Facebook and a variety of other places. And yeah, that's cool too. But something about like, I even look back now and like I threw away every high school yearbook I ever had because after high school, I felt I was such a self-conscious person in high school and so anxious that the memories were terrible. Like, I don't want this. And so I just like, I don't really care. I throw this away. Then I see my wife still has several of hers, and I look at it like, oh man, I kind of wish I had kept that stuff, but you know, it's all good.
Oh, I mean, I think it's important. I think it's important to have connections to those memories, and it's nice when you have a physical aid. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I found this, I was like, oh no, I just dropped it. When I found this delicate little piece of paper, it was great to remember it, and I think it's great. But I feel like memories are just like your own goods in your house. Like I'm actually on a terrible end of that spectrum in that I'm like a hoarder. Like I have kept too many things. I mean, it's funny because it's like there were things that were in that box. I'm looking at it right now, and it's like so many things, Jeff, that it's like, oh, I've got to, what's the Marie Kondo, like I've got to think it and say, good job, thing that I kept from apparently in a box for like 20 years. Good job, that thing. You can go and rest now. Because yeah, it's like I'm glad that I kept some things, but Jeff, I've got the opposite problem. I probably kept way too many things.
Okay, so you just made me realize. All right, we're gonna do this before we get into our topic. I'm just gonna pull out a handful. So I did collect comics when I was in high school, and like middle school, high school. But I wasn't into Marvel, and I wasn't prepped for this. I just grabbed a stack off the shelf randomly. I didn't want to turn my head too much. But I've had all my comics in a small comic box, so like one of the smaller ones, not the big long things. Since before high school, I've had these things, and I stopped doing anything with them. I have actually pulled. I didn't even take them out of the box. I moved this box from Long Beach, where I grew up, to Carson City, Nevada, to another place in Carson City, Nevada, to 4 places in Reno that I lived, back to California, where I've been living with, now with my wife for the last, this, 20 something years, 25 years now, give or take. And I never took any of the books out of the box. I just carried this box everywhere I went. But this is what I used. This is the comics I used to collect. Image. I don't know if you ever collected.
Remember Image Comics? Jim Lee, if I'm right, is it Jim Lee who is the he does all of the artists
I think
work?
So. A lot of these books, like Stormwatch with Scott Clark and Trevor Scott. I don't know who they were, but all these books, Gen 13 and Pit, like this creature, this big creature called Pit, was like a thing.
Oh yeah.
Oh dude, yeah. This guy who's like Captain
what
America meets Superman meets a complete psychopath called Union with like these lightsaber like things that he carried around. Oh dude,
yeah.
yes. These are like issue number 1s. I don't know if they're worth anything, but I've had these things. So yes, I have kept some things. I even have a little Spawn car, like a Hot Wheel car, still in the package. And I don't keep things in packages. Like this all here. I don't care. I take them out. That's not what they're for me. But I've had this thing. It's buried. I came across it the other day. I've had this thing someplace laying around since Spawn was a huge deal. Since Spawn, before the movies, when Spawn comics were actually like a big deal.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I see. I love that kind of stuff. By the way, I kept all of my old comic books too, and I think I might have. I think there is an Image comic books title, and I think it was called Wildcats.
Yes.
And it's like W period I period L period D period, because wild meant something, and they were like the Image comics version of X-Men. Yes. And but it was like a rough X-Men. Like
everything in Image Comics was rough. There was no they weren't like soft characters. You look at these covers, everybody is just really intense for some reason on every one of these comics. I have no idea. I don't even remember the books, but I just remember them being like, everyone is just intense and angry for some reason all of the time.
Oh no, it was great. It was great. And again, we're gonna get to the topic upstairs.
We will.
But I will say
we like to bury the lead a lot on this show.
We're gonna bury the lead. We're burying the lead. One of the things that I remember that about Image Comics though, and by the way, like this is a thing that happened in comics and even the Star Wars comics was, I think it's Jim Lee. Jim Lee is just this amazing artist. But what he did is he always built in like a ton of minutia into like every frame. Like every panel is just filled with all this detail. And there's always like metallic backgrounds and like all this detailing on the walls and all this machinery. And there's a concept in music, I think, terrible that Phil Spector created it because Phil Spector is a horrible person. But Phil Spector created this thing called the Wall of Sound when he was producing with the Beatles, and you can hear it on like the Revolver album. You can hear it. You can hear it often. I want to say even Hey Jude is like a really great example of like the wall of sound where it's just so much music is inside of that. Like there's orchestra music. There's all of this extra sound. And it's funny because there's all of these versions of that where it's like they'll strip away the wall of sound and you can just hear it for like just the music, but it was like it was meant to be an overwhelming experience, and that's what Image Comics was like reading. It was like every panel was packed full of stuff, and you just had so much going on with every single page. And I kind of liked that, like especially when I was younger and really getting into comics. I was like, oh wow, like there's so much going on here. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, shall we talk about some worlds of Star Wars?
Go and do it.
Do you want to go first? I went first last time. I think you should go first this time.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about. I'd actually like to talk about it from the perspective of how the worlds of Star Wars and the ones that I'm going to select really add to the story. And I love the tweet that you put out ahead of this episode, Jeff, because you talked a lot about how settings, the places in the planets, the people where people go, that those things really help to they add to the story. And often, especially in science fiction, science fiction's always typically been like very low rent. Like, what could you get by on, And so their settings were often very cheaply developed. Like Tatooine is on a desert planet. Obviously, it's influenced by Dune, but it's really cheap. If you've ever shot a movie, it's really cheap to shoot in the desert. You just go there, and there's no cops there that are going to say, hey, do you have a permit? No, you just go and shoot in the desert. It's great. And there's tons of natural lighting, so it makes it a little bit easier to do lighting. It's great. Versus when you have a little bit more money and you can invest a little bit in settings, like if, for example, the Lord of the Rings movies, you can really add to the story. And so the ones that I wanted to talk about, well, I actually want to talk about 3 of them at once because I think they really add to the story, is Hoth, Dagobah, and Bespin in The Empire Strikes Back. And I'm sorry if I just took 3 planets. I'm gonna summarize them in a slightly different way. So Jeff, if you have Hoth, Dagobah, or Bespin on your list, I'm still very much eager to hear what you have to say.
You're in luck. I do not have any of the. I don't have any of the classics on my list.
Okay, awesome. I have some others that are from actually the sequel trilogy that I'm really excited to talk about. But I will just kind of couch it in Hoth, Dagobah, and Bespin right now. In that those are settings that work incredibly well to add to the story that you're trying to watch. And it's something that's very like subconscious that you don't really notice until you're in the midst of the story. And so when you start, after the opening crawl, there is all of this talk about how desperate the situation is for the rebellion, that they're being pursued all over. And now they've had to take this place. And then the next scene that you see is the probes coming out, and then you get to Hoth. And the next person that you see is Luke Skywalker on a Tauntaun. And he's out on a ridge, and the pullback is he is alone. And he is surrounded by desolation. And it's not the kind of desolation that you feel like in a desert. It's the type of desolation that only like the Arctic or the snow can produce, which is a desperation, which is like a being alone. It's not a desolation, it's a desperation. And it's being truly alone. And how just living, anybody who's been in like the real cold will immediately connect to that and know that it is incredibly it's an incredibly trying environment, and that the whole winter is coming
Hmm.
motif really comes up, that you are living desperately, and that's Luke there. And then you transition to Dagobah. And the thing that I love about Dagobah is every part of it is alive. The entire set, whether he's in the lake and there's the goods in the swamp and there's the monster that eats R2, the grit and the grime, the organic nature of Dagobah. You go into Yoda's little hut and he's got snakes everywhere, and he's like, "You got to get this snake out of there." And Luke goes down into the hole, into the cave, and there's an iguana there. But all of the setting, everything about the setting is life and living, and this is Yoda, and all you can think of is how this is the Force, this field that's being generated by all living creatures. And so the setting is telling you everything that you need to know about Yoda, that he lives harmoniously with nature, that he's this little green frog that just is living, if not consuming, all of this life that's around him, and that he is one with his habitat, which is very much a great example of what the Jedi are. They aren't. They surrender themselves to
Hmm.
life. I love that. And then the final group, Bespin, which is this beautiful place, and like most beautiful things, something that you should keep an eye on, because of a turnabout that could happen on in a story.
Hmm.
So I think of all three of those elements, which is of course what happens in Cloud City. It's this beautiful place that is very inviting, only to have the rug pulled out from underneath you. It's the honey that you drink that's actually a poison. And so what from Hoth to Dagobah to Bespin, you have these great settings that really like make the story. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on how I've got more examples, but that's
Yeah,
my favorite one of places and planets really making
that's
the
so
story.
interesting to think about. So wow. Okay, so to start with Hoth, I love the way you described it. I love because what it shows you is that, and the thing I think I've always loved about snow scenes or winter scenes
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
there's something about the summertime in heat and in a desert, whether you need water, shade, whatever else, that is, it's intense. Like everything about that
Yes,
is, it feels like it's
yes,
trying to get at you. Like it feels like something is actively trying to. If you see a person struggling through the desert, like in The English Patient, or movies like that, where you're like, or even Star Wars, for example, like you feel like the sun is beating down on you. Everything is beating down on you. It's intentionally going after you, is what it feels like. But when you flip that and you go for something like Hoth, it's
yeah,
almost like nothing cares if you're there. There is nothing that
yeah,
there's almost a nothingness to the environment, and to the lack of concern there is for you to be in that environment. It's almost like it's devoid of, it's not devoid of life, but it's almost as if it's devoid of any intentionality. And the snow is just a
yeah,
representation of nothingness. So Tauntaun's and other, banthas and other sorts of wampas, whatever else, can live in the environment, but they make their own path. They're not aided by the environment in any way, shape, or form. The environment's just going to keep laying snow down, and if you happen to fall down and you're laid down for too long, you're just going to get buried by snow, and no one's ever going to know. And the environment doesn't care. There's a nothingness to it, and that I think
yes,
reinforces the scene with Luke on his tauntaun, and when that all happens, to feel like he's alone, and unless he can keep radio contact, you're just alone. And when the snowstorm comes through, no one's ever going to find you. So like it almost, it depersonalizes the situation, and it makes it feel
yep,
even more intense. Like I would almost be more scared to be on Hoth than I would ever be to be on Tatooine, because at least in Tatooine, especially if like a crate dragon's coming your way, you know what's going to be coming that way. Or if there's a pit where there's a
yeah,
sarlacc, you can probably see the signs of it. But on Hoth, good luck. Like you're probably not seeing
yeah,
anything. It's like something happens to you, no one's ever going to know. You're just going to go away. But then almost dead in the middle between those two things is, or not even dead in the middle, it's almost like this antithesis of both of those things, is Dagobah, where Nothing is
Yeah.
trying to intentionally do anything to you, and the
Hmm.
things that are there care about things. So they're not like Hoth. It's almost like
Hmm.
life is just existing. And it's not that it doesn't care if you're there, but if you are there, you're just part of the plethora of life that is just living while you are there. But it's not intentionally going after you or leaving you alone. It's just a place where things are existing and just going about their daily lives. And
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
interesting that Yoda could survive there for so long. When you think about it that way, because you start to realize the character that Yoda was really embracing what the Force is and everything about the Force, or at least the lighter
Yeah.
side of it. He could live in a place like that and just basically age himself away, and that's probably why he aged so fast in that short period of time and diminished, because he
Hmm.
was probably just his body was just letting itself go as he was mentally becoming more and more one with the cosmic force and less with the living force, because he'd already lived for 800 years, 900 years, but he'd been fine
Yeah.
up until just a decade or two before this, like fighting Palpatine in the Senate chamber. A couple decades
Yeah.
before. It wasn't that long after that happened, yet somehow he's diminished. Out of all that time, this short 20-year period, he diminished. To me, it feels almost like he was allowing himself to realize that I can still influence, but it's hard to fight back the pull of wanting to be a part of this grandiose cosmic force that you have to leave your physical body to go be with. And for a being like Yoda that is so attached to that, unlike other Jedi
Yeah.
have ever been, that's interesting. I had never really thought about it in that context, but it so makes these characters what they are in the moment.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And again, I love the settings. I love the sounds, like the sounds of those planets. Like when you're on Hoth, there is an eeriness that I feel like really speaks to the, again, desolation, desperation. When you're out there, it's only the wind. And when you're in even Echo Base, it's like a ooh, it's all these
Yeah.
like weird, like, it's like it is not, and it's not a place you want to be. And then you go to Dagobah. Honestly, I feel like I could make a case about this. Empire Strikes Back to me is horror movie adjacent.
Oh yeah, it is.
It is horror movie adjacent because it's got all the elements that really speak to a horror movie,
Mm-hmm.
up to and including a guy coming. It could have been like Chainsaw Murderer, except it's Darth Vader and he's huge, and he it's when Luke's going through, like, he's on the Thin and he's walking into the door in Cloud City, and he's looking and he's like, and all you hear is the lightsaber ignite, and it's and he's like beating.
It could have easily been
Oh,
Leatherface and a chainsaw. And
exactly, like
ah!
chainsaw, like he's like, ah, yeah, exactly, right. He comes out of nowhere. It is a jump scare scene, and the only reason why it's not more of a jump scare is because you hear the lightsaber ignite in advance. But if they didn't have that, it would have just been a straight jump scare.
Yeah.
And but it's then you go to Dagobah, and it's that sound of the animals, and it's the birds that are flying overhead. It is the craft in creating a great setting. And I'll add too, and I know we've not talked about music, but the music for all of those, each of them have their own theme.
Yes. Yeah.
The missing music that is in Hoth, because of the isolation, the building progression that is inside of Dagobah and Yoda's theme, which is all meant to inspire luminous beings. Are we not this crude matter? Versus at the end where it's Bespin, and Bespin has all of these like big trumpets and everything. It's like bum 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 bum. It's all these things that should make you feel great, but it's not.
You know
It's
it's totally
yeah.
superficial. It reminds you.
It's a veneer.
Bespin reminds me of Rome and like gladiatorius,
Yes.
like a coliseum,
Yes.
where anybody who's a common citizen or who has money who shows up, oh wow, it's fantastic, they're catering to me.
Yeah.
But literally right below your feet are people enslaved or people who have offered to be gladiators so they can win money or whatever else. But like, it's not awesome. Literally right below that, but on
Mm-hmm.
the surface, it feels like decadence. It feels like beauty, and like it's so easy for those things to be masked. I mean, it's easily seen when Chewie and Han get thrown into or not Han, but Chewie and others get thrown into the jail, the prison
Mm-hmm.
room on Bespin, where they're trying to fix C3PO, and Lando comes in, but like they're in this room that's like, wait, hold on, this doesn't look like a space that would be. It's cramped, it's dark, it's a little dingy. This doesn't look like a space you'd expect to be on Bespin, but it's a mining facility. It's just meant to look really pretty on the surface and create this veneer, like you said. That's
Yeah,
interesting. It's really fascinating.
it's very much like a if you've ever read The Time Traveler, it's very much like in the future where you have the Eloi and the Morlocks. And in
Oh
fact, I
yeah,
would say that the
yes.
Ugnaughts are very much Morlocky like. Where at the surface level everything's really pretty, everybody's having a great time. Oh, look at how wonderful it is, but then you go down beneath and you see the machinery that's making all of that possible, and it's unappealing, and it just looks like it's just thick with smoke, and it's not appealing at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the lighting of that of the set is all orange, and it's not, it's meant to be more like it's shouting to you, you need to take extreme caution here. There's these grates that they're walking on that you could fall over. I mean, honestly, what is that beam? Why do you need to be walking out on that ledge?
Has nobody ever heard of
where Luke
OSHA
gets
in
his
that
hand
galaxy?
out
I mean, come on.
No,
We
exactly.
need OSHA to show up because you need some handrails, a chain, something.
No, exactly. It is one of these things where I just think but again, I feel like this all speaks to like the beauty that goes into the crafting of a planet, and its look. And it's not just because like some people will be like, oh, doesn't Star Wars just do these planets of one thing? This is a forest planet, this is a desert planet, this is a water planet. And it's like, no, it's meant to evoke something else. That the selection of the environment is meant to aid the story, and it's not just there by accident. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily make those connections.
I agree. Yeah, it's what I think so many people often miss is that the planet was, I would guess, we don't know this for sure, but I would guess in many cases the planet may have been either selected before the story was written or afterward to say what type of planet would fit the story we're trying to tell, because these characters need to interact in a very particular set of ways. Where should they be? What's the environment going to have to look like for these interactions to look like they work together? And I think it leads to one of the planets I picked, which is
I can't wait to hear it.
one of the planets I picked was Lothal, which we learn about in Star Wars Rebels. And
oh my gosh,
the reason I love Lothal, and only being introduced to it in Rebels, is because it's a much more graceful planet than most of them. It's mostly grasslands everywhere with mountain ranges. There are cities. The main city that most of the things take place in is just a city like any other city with buildings and things, but they're more ramshackle buildings. They're not. They're more what you would think of a city that has grown up with limited resources and money that they have. Although it is still a city, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's still a planet that, and this is what I loved about how they kept coming back to Lothal, was they didn't need this burgeoning group of rebels to become a group and then take off and go, let's go save other planets. They kept coming back to this one. And I thought that actually was really meaningful, not just because it worked with Ezra Bridger's story being born on that planet and living on the planet. That's important. But I think it aids in the fact that they were able to build out Lothal as a planet connected to the living and the cosmic force. So while they're on the planet, they towards the end, I think it's the last season for the most part, they interact with the Loth wolves. These big wolves that most people think have been extinct forever, but they're still there. They just don't interact with humans. They can move in and out of the force a lot, so that people can't actually see them unless they want to be seen. And they're big. In most cases, they're twice the height of a human, if not 4 to 5 times bigger than a human. They're just these various sizes, and they interact with the force, and they just leave people alone because they're not good or bad. They're not really light or dark side beings. They are sort of just interact with the living force in whatever it is, whatever ebbs and flows it has. And so you have that creature, this force sensitive being that is neither light nor dark. It just is. There is a Jedi temple on Lothal, and as we're seeing in the High Republic era books, there are Jedi temples as well as Jedi outposts all throughout the galaxy, and they were manned by a Jedi Master and maybe a staff of Jedi to help out in that sector of space and be a support group to help people who are sick and alien and needed food, needed supplies for the Republic, whatever, as well as to be local, like not law enforcement, but to handle disputes and things. And so we see a very old Jedi temple in Rebels that has been long abandoned. but it was much revered, and it's really interesting they have that. And then we also see this whole like art piece that's in the very final season where we actually see the Mortis gods, and they are guarding basically this mural that is a magical mural or a force mural that takes Ezra into the world between worlds. And so
Mm.
the planet becomes a character in the story, probably almost the equivalent of 2 to 3 characters in the story, because of the different things,
Mhm.
like not just the Loth wolves and everything else, but the planet itself is an integral part of what's happening in that story. I don't think it could happen on almost any other planet, because the type of people that would live on a planet like this would behave a certain way and act a certain way, which allows the story to be told of the Empire subjugating them the way that they did, which allows for
Mhm.
Thrawn to come to the planet and start his TIE Defender program, which allows these other things to all happen in this way. But if you put them on a Hoth or a Tatooine or what have you, it would be a very different story. They couldn't interact the way they do because you can't move around as much on those extreme planets. You can't
Yep.
socialize and be agrarian in the ways that you can on a big grass-filled planet that's kind of beautiful to that regard. Like the interactions between people are different. They're not bad or good. They're just different. And I think a planet like Lothal was fantastic in that it allowed people to live in almost in harmony and peace with each other. Nobody really does, but more so than they would on more harshly environmented planets. And I think that's really
Yes.
it really is a testament to how the setting really plays into the story that's being told, because it wouldn't work otherwise. It just wouldn't.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think too this is another example of like, and again, you're always making choices. I feel like when you're making a movie or you're telling a story, and I think it's a very deliberate choice to have Lothal be there, be the setting, and the reason why is because let me compare it to Tatooine. Tatooine is Luke is on his dirt farming aunt and uncle's property, and all you want to do is leave it. Once you get to Tatooine, it's like, can we not leave this place? It's to evoke Luke and his dreams. I want to leave this place. Even the binary sunset scene, all of that setting. And then later in Return of the Jedi, he's with Han Solo, and Han Solo's like, I see a big light blur, I see a big dark blur, and Luke says, I was born here, and Han says, yeah, you're gonna die here, it's convenient. It's like one of my favorite sets of lines. But in all of that time when he talks about Tatooine, he never, not once, talks about how much he likes it, how much he likes that he's home. In fact, when he says reluctantly, I can't go with you to Alderaan, Obi-Wan, I got stuff to do here. It's not because, man, I love it here. Tashi Station, there's no place better.
Shoot some Womprats in my T16, like, woo!
Yeah.
Happy days.
Yeah. It's a huge problem. So he's like, he's never
You're a violent kid. What are you doing?
Yes, like, what are you doing? You kill things. So putting that aside, right? He doesn't want to be there. So when when Aunt and Uncle die, when Uncle Henry and Annie M die, Henry. he's got nothing to lose. You know what I mean? So he's like, yeah, let's get the heck out of here. Versus Lothal is something to lose.
Yes.
And that is a symbol for the story that there is history to be lost. There is culture to be lost. Yes. There is something here that needs to be defended. Mm-hmm. And that plays into a story. And I think that's where it's so unique in the Star Wars universe, because even as important as Naboo is to Padme and Queen Amidala Padme in episode 1, it's never important again. As important as Alderaan is to Princess Leia when it blows up, once it's gone, it's like, where am I from? There isn't a connection anymore to those things. But Lothal is someone's home, and that becomes important. Yep. So it's a stand-in for something, a concept. It's not just a setting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I have 2 others, and given the time, I'm going to just blurt them both out, and we'll talk about them as much as we can, and no big deal. So the 2 others I picked are, like I said, I picked some off-the-wall ones from books and things. I picked Umbara, and I picked Batuu. So
Oh, snap!
I love Batuu, but I want to get to
Oh,
Batuu
that's
last
awesome.
because Batuu's like one of my favorite planets for some super amazing reasons. At least I think so.
Right on.
We'll see if
Right on.
everybody else agrees.
Right on.
So
No, no, that's
Umbara,
awesome.
if anyone out there is listening, if you haven't heard of Umbara, it's also known as the Shadow World. It's a planet in
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars in a particular sector that has no sunlight. It's called the
Mm-hmm.
Shadow World because it receives
Mm-hmm.
no. But people live there and thrive there. There's a whole society that lives there. Plants grow. It's a thriving planet. They just have no sunlight. But the reason I find it interesting is because they're involved in the Clone Wars. They were a Republic aligned planet in society for a long time, and then decided to go over to
Mm-hmm.
with the Separatists. And then afterwards, the Empire took them over and just did nasty stuff to them because they have Dunium mines, and Dunium in Star Wars is a material that is used to build starships. And so they were strip mined
Yep.
basically by the Empire to build more Star Destroyers. But there's not a lot more to it for me than that. But the reason I love the planet and the idea of the planet is a couple fold. One is that to me it is a metaphor, or I guess an analogy for how in sci-fi and in Star Wars in general, Lucas and others have taken planets and been able, like we've talked about, use them as a way to talk about larger, or maybe this could even be allegorical, larger concepts that
Oh,
we deal with in
yeah.
our real world, where here is a planet that is so different from the planet that we live in and know, and contradicts so many things that we know, where solar radiation is necessary for life on planet Earth. It just is. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Nothing else matters. Without solar
Yep.
radiation, life doesn't exist. Here's a planet in a story that has zero. There is no sun. There's no sun even close by. It receives zero solar radiation from any heavenly body. Yet people live there. Plants thrive. Certain types of plants thrive. Native vegetarian and omnivorous and carnivorous species thrive there. So how is that possible? How is that a thing? That contradicts everything we're used to as humans on planet Earth. And so I love that because it challenges the idea of that challenges like, wait, but what would those people be like? Wouldn't they be sad and unhappy and
Mm-hmm.
all that?
Mm-hmm.
But then when we meet some Umbarans in various stories, and they're not super prominent, at least they haven't been so far, they're not overly mad or sad. They're just people. They have politics and they go through things.
Yeah.
Some are perfectly fine, some are not happy, but that's just how people are. And it's interesting
Yep.
because it allows a story to contradict the things that you hold dear, so you can start to really get yourself out of your preconceived notions of what beings are like and creatures could be like and behave like in a galaxy like this. Like, they're
Yep.
all different. Everybody is different. Every creature is different, and these beings are different too for their own reasons. And I find that just really fascinating. It's also a planet that Thrawn goes to in the last trilogy, where when he's first coming up through the ranks of the Empire, he's following this by a guy named is it Sybil? No, I can't remember his first name, but Signy. They just call him Signy.
Mm-hmm.
He has a different like bad guy name, but they finally realize they're one and the same person. And he has a base on Umbara, and there's a whole battle that happens with Thrawn. He finally concedes and gives up, or gets killed, one of the two. But there's an encounter with Thrawn and that planet, but it's the first time we really see that planet prominently displayed in any meaningful way, other than some passing mentions in the Clone Wars cartoon series and things like that. But I don't know. I found that really interesting that it's just different, and it really taxes how you view what life can be like, or beings can be like, in an environment that is so foreign, would be completely foreign to us. Like, all of our science tells you can't live without solar radiation. Well, what if you could?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What would the people be like? Hey, Rich, by the way, Rich, it's okay. It's okay, buddy.
Yeah,
we're here for you.
It's okay. It's okay because I saved my Star Trek reference. So this is very much like the Remans that are on Romulus. No, so I like exactly what you said there. I think it's so great, Jeff, because I think the setting to help tell a story, right? Like the setting to, like, how does that contribute to the story you want to tell? It's a planet that is in shadows. It's covered in darkness. And there are things like how there are things when unseen happen in the darkness. I mean, the Sith operate in the darkness, there's a lot of underhanded things that happen there.
Mm-hmm.
And how a people that don't have literal light shining on them can, be subjugated can be used, can be a place of hideout for something that isn't necessarily the best.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love the idea of how that setting can really contribute to the story. And Rich, I saved it. I even thought when Jeff was telling the story about a planet, covered in darkness, I thought, if Rich is here, I've got to talk about Remans. So anyway, go on ahead.
Okay, so the last planet, my favorite one to talk about is Batuu. So Batuu, there's just so many different histories, so many things going on. But the shortest version I can tell is that this is where Anakin and Thrawn first meet, and it's one of the first times we ever encounter Thrawn in any meaningful way. And we learn more about that encounter in the most recent trilogy that's been out, where we're only focusing on Thrawn when he's much younger, before this incident or after that incident happened. But Thrawn actually meets Anakin during the Clone Wars. He comes into what the Chiss would call lesser space, which is the main part of the galaxy that we're familiar with. And he's hovering over Batuu because he and someone else are just checking out the galaxy. There's some sort of disturbance or thing they've heard about in the Batuu region. They don't know that name of that planet, but they're there. And they encounter another ship that shows up, which happens to be Anakin and Padme, or Anakin looking for Padme. And they encounter each other, and they decide to help each other out. Thrawn ends up helping him find Padme on this separatist planet, and there's a whole plot by the separatists to create these battle droids that are using a new type of armor, and I forget what it's called, but it basically is resistant to blaster fire as well as lightsabers. And it's like, holy crap, this could turn the tide of the war, because lightsabers can't harm them. It could be really hard for the Jedi to actually fight these things. Anyway, they interact with each other. They kind of go head to head a little bit, but they end up respecting each other a great deal afterwards, because the tactical mind of Thrawn and the way that Anakin is always willing to just do the thing that needs to get done, it works great. But in that same book, what's really awesome is I forget the title of the book, but in the book they go back and forth between that incident and now in the current time, where Thrawn is was tasked by Palpatine to partner with Vader to go investigate a disturbance in the Force around Batuu. And so they both together have to go back, and the book basically rotates chapters between what happened when they were younger and what's happening now. So you get to see the differences between how they interact with one another. And the conflict in each is similar, but it's also different. It's force-sensitive things that are happening, but to each person a little bit differently in each situation. And I think it's interesting because we really get to see not only how Thrawn interacts with other people, how specifically he interacted with Vader or Anakin, and then later how he starts to realize that Anakin and Vader are one and the same. And then towards the end of the book, he actually ends up agreeing to huge spoiler alert. I apologize. Spoiler alert, spoilers. I should have a big banner that comes up. In it, what ends up happening is Thrawn teases several times, sort of like Alice in Wonderland, several times with the caterpillar saying, "No, you're not Alice." "Yes, I am." "No, you're not Alice." Then partway through, "You might be Alice." A little bit further along, "You feel a little bit like Alice, but you're not really Alice." And then at the end, "Now you're Alice." It's that sort of situation where Thrawn the whole time is like, "You're behaving like somebody I knew." Never says his name, but like somebody I knew in the Clone Wars, and Vader kind of reacts. And it keeps happening till the very end when Thrawn basically says it without saying his name, and Vader makes a comment directly to Thrawn that essentially tells him without saying it, "I am not that person." And Thrawn goes, "Yeah, you're right. You're not that." But Thrawn is not afraid of Vader. He's not scared of him in any way. He just realizes that what he has now seen in the way that Vader reacts, he calculates, because Thrawn is really smart. He realizes that Vader has squashed whatever person existed before him and is now Vader. And I think it's the first time in anything that we read or see, even in the movies, that we see Vader has accepted exactly who he is, and he's not going back. He's not letting himself go back. It's going to take the events of the Star Wars movies and Luke and all of that for Vader to kind of come back full circle, but we're not going to see that again for a while. But that book is like, holy shit, this is the Vader that we were expecting. And that is the finality of this. This is the story arc he is going to have, because the decisions he makes have to lead to that point, and they're not going to be happy ones. But it's fascinating because there's so much stuff that happens there. That's actually where we first get introduced to the Chiss and what they call when he first meets Anakin and hears his name, Anakin Skywalker. Thrawn's like, "Skywalker," and just says his last name. And Anakin's like, "What?" He goes, "Nothing. I just know that name. I know that word by something else." And then he moves on. He doesn't talk about it again. But we learn in the Thrawn books that the Chiss refer to the Force sensitive kids as Skywalkers, and they have them on their ships, and they navigate hyperspace in the unknown regions and in wild space, but you can't use a hyperdrive to do it or calculations because there's so many disturbances. They use these kids that are force sensitive, girls primarily, who have this skill, who can basically zone into the living force and guide them through their jumps. But nobody outside of the Chiss ascendancy is aware of it. And Thrawn is drawn with Vader to this Batuu region later on to find out that the Grisk, what they're basically being touted as like what they're actually going to do in canon of what the Yuzong Vong was done in books. The Grisk, they're manipulative, all these types of things. They're stealing Chiss children who are force sensitive to use them for like artificial gravity wells, and so they're both drawn there. And then Vader has a lot of conflict because he's remembering what happened with him and Padme on that planet. Thrawn is remembering some stuff, but he doesn't remember why. But now he's dealing with this impending problem for the entire Chiss ascendancy, which means other people get to learn what the Skywalkers are, and he doesn't want anybody to find out, not even the Empire, what these are. So there's like, he's walking a fine line of not pissing off Vader, and Vader's dealing with his own emotional conflict, and that happens through the course of an entire book, and it's fascinating. For just a planet that's a jungle planet with some manufacturing sites, there's not much on the planet, but so much story arc and dynamics and changes happen between those two characters around surrounding this one planet. And I think it's so important because, again, the planet, if you describe the surface and what the planet actually is, it's not much. It's a kind of a not a jungle moon, but it's a forested planet with some cities and things like that. By itself, it's nothing. But without that planet, the story did not work. It needed to have a 30-year runtime of being a part of on the edge of wild space, so the Separatists want to use it because no one else is going to go there. It's not well traveled. They can do the nefarious things there. It's on the edge of wild space, so the Chiss can get there, but they don't know why they're there. Like, it's at the center of everything, but no one like. What do they say? It's at the center of everything, yet no one wants to use it. Something to that effect. It's fascinating. Like, I just absolutely love it. What did Rich say? Right,
I love this.
The Will Wheaton nut to your
I love that. I love
nice.
It. That's so great.
Nice.
That's awesome. I really like that. At a super level, like at a super level for the story, there is a concept, that you can't go home again. And the reason why isn't because you can't. I mean, obviously you can, but it's that you've changed. It's that you can't go home again because that isn't your home. This new you, it's like a ship of Theseus type of problem where it's like you're different now. And what's great about the breakdown, all the beats of the story that you said, is it's that the place doesn't change. It's that you've changed. And you see that in a lot of movies or a lot of books where someone has to go home or they go back to a place again. It's not that, you can look at it even in science fiction and things like Ripley going back to LV. Of course, I can't remember the numbers. When she's there the first time, she escapes, and when she comes back, it's her that's been changed by that experience. And so, even though the planet is the same, or maybe worse, it's really Ripley that's changed. It's that she is a survivor. And so in all of this, I think it's great. I think you really hit the nail on the head. I know we got to wrap up, and oh my gosh, I could have talked about so many things more on this. I feel like my favorite movie of locations is really I love all of the locations that are found in The Last Jedi. Every single one. That is my favorite movie when it comes to settings. As much as I was talking about Empire Strikes Back, it is my favorite movie when it comes to settings, because each one of those settings is telling the story with the actors. And I love visual cues and things. And when Kylo Ren's foot scrapes across the surface and the surface of salt, and I love that it's salt. and you just see that red line in what is that, crate. It is
Yeah, great.
so great. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to probably do an episode of like the locations for each of the movies and just talk them through. I think it's a good idea. We just talk them through like
Yeah.
how they
Canto
aided.
Bite. I mean,
Oh yeah,
yeah, we could have sat down. I'm not joking around. I could spend another half hour here just talking about how the settings of The Last Jedi are not just great in Star Wars. They're great in movies.
yeah,
If you're going to do science fiction, go full board. Really make the settings work for you, and to have your Las Vegas like Canto Bite, which is all about money, 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 and or versus is it crate? I
yes,
keep saying that. Is it crate?
yep, it's great.
And having the salt, having it be salt and not snow, that nothing grows in salt, the salting of the earth, the division that is between Kylo Ren and Luke Skywalker, and it's come to a head on a planet that is covered in salt. It's perfect. It's salt
You
in the
almost don't get
wound.
any more phenolic. There is no. Yeah,
Yes.
it's yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll add it to the
Okay.
list. That'll be a future one. And I did not mean to like tease it out of you that like we need to end. I was just remembering. Ooh, we should flash the subs
Oh yeah.
button right there. So if you haven't subscribed,
Oh yeah.
subscribe. Hit the button.
It's
Hit
like
the button. Well, not that
right
button
here.
because that's button just in the
Yeah.
video. But hit the button on
There
the
it is.
channel because you subscribe. We'll put all the worlds in that we talked about today in the show notes below. I'll make sure that gets done here soon. And yes, in the next we will target in the next week or so to get moved over to our new channel and start live streaming there.
Yes.
We'll get you everyone all the details about it. But still expect to see the same content as well as the same social posts that we usually do.
That's right.
Yeah, it'll be good stuff. I think we're good
Good
tonight,
deal.
man. I think we're good.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. From talking about this movie ticket that I found
Yes.
of the midnight showing of episode 1 in 1999, all the way to talking about how these stories are so enriched by their settings. Jeff, this has been one of my favorite episodes. And Rich, I'm really glad that you were able to come on to today's show. So good to see you. And if that is an invitation to come on Rich's show, I am 100% on board with that. That would be awesome.
Totally, dude. Yeah, Rich, send us the information for Sunday and we'll definitely tune in, buddy. By the way,
Good deal.
some books before I ran expanding myself. I don't know if you ever watched The Dragon Prince on Netflix, the series.
No, I have not watched The Dragon Prince.
Dude.
I've had a lot of people talk about it, but I've not
Animated
watched
series
it.
on Netflix. Watch it. Everyone who's watching, go watch it immediately. They're easy episodes.
Right on.
It is classic, just amazing high fantasy, elves and dragons and all that, but it doesn't take itself seriously. It's very silly. It's almost like Avatar type humor, but the artistry is amazing. I mean, not the artistry isn't amazing in Avatar, but it's good art, great storytelling, very comedic and lighthearted while also being serious and sets up this whole world that they're building. It's a Netflix creation. This is not another
right on.
Yeah, and while they've been delayed in the next couple of seasons because of the pandemic, they've been releasing books. So they released a full graphic novel version of book 1 called Earth or Fire, I think, and that came out a few months back. And then book 2, Sky, just came out, which is a separate little tale within. So each of the seasons has been a book 1, book 2, book 3.
Nice.
And within one of the seasons was book 2, but they published a book 1 and a book 2 that is a sub story that happens that they didn't tell in the animated TV series. So they published a book to tell another side story that happened to the characters, but you just don't see it on TV. Watch it. Fantastic.
That is awesome. I will check that out. I feel like, Jeff, a future episode we could do is if you like Star Wars, you'll like blank.
Oh, dude.
Because there's so many like books, movies that I've watched where I've been like, oh wow, this is Star Wars. This reminds me of Star Wars, and I feel like we could easily do that. In fact, or this was inspired by Star Wars. Like I firmly believe the Fire Lord's throne room is based off of the original concept art for what the Emperor's throne room was going to look like in Revenge of the Jedi. In Avatar, I think if you like Star Wars, you're gonna love Avatar: The Last Airbender. or Korra for that
The
matter.
Legend
But
of
I
Korra,
love
yeah.
things like, yeah. I'm really eager now to watch this. On the other side of this wall. You can't hear it, or maybe you can. My kids are watching Avatar: The Last Airbender right now. They're watching the Avatar Aang episode, which is the last episode. So yeah, it's
That's
we're
awesome.
always looking for really good animation, anything that we can watch too, and that sounds great.
Yep,
Thank
let's
you
do
so
it.
much.
Yeah, and by the way, pick up books. There's so many new Star Wars comics. I got 2 weeks worth of pull lists here I haven't read yet. I've got so many books. I even have a variant cover. I didn't realize they was available, but I got a
Oh,
variant
that's
cover
cool.
of issue 8, Marvel issue 8. So here's the original cover they put out. That is Keeve Trennis, one of my favorite characters here. She's right here. And then I forget this
Right
one's
on.
name, but this is a new one. It's a new type of Jedi called a Wayseeker. A
Oh,
Wayseeker, it's a Jedi that has decided that their needs in exploring the Force, the path the Force has laid out for them, differs from what the Jedi Council has. So they go to the Council and say, "I believe my path is different. I need to become a Wayseeker." And they go off and they get a ship and they go do their own thing for whatever period
that's
of time that
awesome.
means. And maybe they come back and they be part of the Council and be part of the Order again, or not,
I
and
like
they
that.
just go and they go with kind of wherever the paths of the Force take them. So that's a new character and a new type of character they introduced. And this is the variant cover of that same book. And in this,
Oh wow.
you see Keeve Trennis here, Skier, this Trandoshan Jedi Master, who's a freaking badass. Avar Chris, who's the new just supreme awesome Jedi Master, and they're in league with the Hutts, trying to fight the
Oh
Drengir,
wow.
these evil plants that are pure dark side. So it's like, dude, if you haven't gotten into reading, you don't even need to watch movies. Just there are so many books to pick up of all kinds that have different stories. Go
Yep.
read them, whatever. Just do it. Just do it. Sorry,
Comic books
Nike.
are
I'm taking it. Just do
yeah.
it.
And by the way, like buy literally any comic book. Like when it comes to Star Wars, but even any comic book, I would say too. Like if there's a thing that catches your eye, and it's a really cool cover, pick it up and read it. I have been lucky, very lucky in that it's like comics roulette, where you can just like walk by something, you see like a really cool cover like that, like so many great covers there. It's like you don't need to try to get the first edition, you don't, or the first the first issue. Just to get right into it.
Yeah.
Comic books are such low weight. So yeah, I think that's awesome. And then yeah, the only other thing that I'd say is that take a risk on some of those things. I ended up finding a really great comic book series called Strike Force. I think it was Moratori. I like walked by it one day and I saw the comic and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read that. That looks really cool. And it's one of the things that I'm still surprised is not a movie today. It would be a great movie, or now that Disney owns it, a great Disney Plus episode. But this only makes me think that you've got all these really great things, like people, really expanding on that world. Jeff, we should do a whole episode about our pitches for ideas for things that
I like it.
that would be a great comic book or a great story. Because I know that between the two of us, we could probably talk a great deal about that.
I love it.
So yeah,
I'm writing
I
that
think it'd
down.
be awesome. Yeah,
Okay, everyone, thanks for watching. We're going to wrap up. It has been a good long night. Thank you for sticking with us. Subscribe
right
to the
on.
channel if you like it.
Yep,
Thumbs up
good
helps
deal.
the videos a lot more. We really appreciate it. More news coming here soon. Rich, thank you for joining, man. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Hey,
Ryan,
we'll see you on your show, Rich. Hey, well, Jeff, this has been a great night.
you too,
Thank you
buddy.
so much.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.